Welcome to episode 2 of Going Green, our second podcast on having a look at basically climate change issues around here. And today we're going to have a look at something to do with solar panels. And one of the things I want to try and look at and explore with my son here, Paul, is why aren't solar panels so popular?
I don't know.
Not many houses really seem to have them. I've been going for my little walk every day and walking around the local area here in Hemel Hempstead. I guess that about one home in every 300 or so
Oh, really? That bad, eh?
has got solar panels on them.
Well, let's just dive very quickly in. So approximately what, 10 years, 10, 15 years ago, the government decided to do this green feed-in tariff.
Yeah, something like that. We got in just on the end of that and
Yeah,
we installed only 5 panels on our roof because
that's how
when we
many.
had all the surveyors, they said that we could only get 5 panels on our roof, and these things were sort of new, I suppose, and we didn't actually at those days have an idea of how big a solar panel was. So if they said to me 5 was going to fit on, I assumed that.
5 wood. Yeah, exactly. So
And then the installers came and said, "Well, you could get 15 on here."
yeah.
So it makes a little bit of difference. They are, I suppose, expensive to buy.
Yes. Well, they were expensive buy. This is the critical thing. See, now solar prices have jumped right down due to the fact that they're being mass produced
Yeah.
in places like China.
Panels are around about, what, £300 ish, depends on what you buy. And then usually they want you to buy special things to go with it, like power optimizers.
Power up, yeah, these voltage regulators.
Well, that one we put onto the mains to take our mains down from 240 volts to 220, which might save some money, but
Well, I don't think it's going to save money in the long run.
it
I actually
might.
going to save maintenance, or more precisely, the keep the panels going for longer, which I think it's one of those
Well, I
odd
don't know if
things.
it's the panels so much because the panels are 12 volts.
Well, yeah, but it's one of those things where
We've got it again going into an inverter. I suppose with the panels, you've got to buy, as I said, the panel. You've got to buy the power optimizer. Of course, all the brackets to try and fit it onto the roof. And they've got a guarantee of what, about 25, 30 years, and they they do last. There's nothing much in them, I suppose, to go wrong. The only problem I have is they may well have a 25-year guarantee, but does the company that sold it actually have a 25-year guarantee? Will they be around in that time?
well,
We
the,
know
the
the people that actually supplied our initial panels don't exist anymore.
no, and then they die because of this is the feeding tariff went, but other companies sprung up, and that's how we got the next additional 7+4 panels, going. So which was bit of
Although
a
I have to admit that company I wouldn't really recommend, and I won't name them. But it took them 2 years to get the additional 4 panels to working.
yeah. Well, that's just such as incompetence. You can't really say that, but that's going beside the point. We're here to talk about solar panels.
Yeah, and you've got to go with the solar panels, inverters. Now that's the expensive bit, and that's the bit that probably won't last
Oh,
as well.
because
We're seeing improvements in the solar panels, the efficiency's going up.
it went up from the initial panels, which are about 29% efficient, with these latest ones being 35. A massive increase in efficiency.
Yeah, I don't know if you. I think the real problem in efficiency is not that of what's quoted on the solar panel, is actually that of when does the sun come out. What else do we go with this? Well, you've got to obviously link these things to the mains, that costs, and you've got to get an electrician in to do that. But on a nice sunny day like we've got today, we've got and we're producing more electricity on our solar panels than we're actually using here. And we've got the lights on, we've got the cameras going, we've got computers going, and we're still making more electricity, so we're exporting some. We could use batteries to store this excess, but then there's another problem with that. Sort of quotes come to sort of put the batteries in, and that they often talk about region of £4,000.
It's money.
And yeah, but then there's a £400 depreciation over 10 years, £400 per year, because after 10 years, we've got to replace those batteries.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a problem with battery technology rather than the solar panels which are doing it. So it's one of those odd things where, yes, they depreciate, but at the same time, the batteries are also getting worse. You know, your mobile phone, you know, the battery dies after a year and a half, and that's all solid use. Yeah.
My old phone used to have a replaceable battery, but nowadays they don't like me having one of those because I wasn't buying a new phone every year or every 2 years.
No, so it's one of the things.
So I've got the cost of buying it. I've got the cost of installing it. We may have the cost of depreciation, batteries, if we want to put those in. Now, we took the decision not to do that because I can't see that I'm going to actually make that amount of electricity. We've got to work out that you put panels on the roof, but how much money does it actually save you? Because if I've spent £5,000 on panels, I've got to make over, let's say, 25, 30 years, more than that amount.
Exactly, and that's the gamble you're trying to make. And critically, it's one of those things where, it depends on your usage. You see, if you're staying, which we were last year, in lockdown, using, in-house all day, you see, then, well, of course, you're using that electricity, and thus, if you're generating that, it's fine, covering it. But the major thing is, of course, if you're, like I say, working, or you're not in the house all the day, and so you're not using that electricity you're generating throughout the day, well, then possibly it might be worth doing the storage stuff, or store later in the day. But even this lovely thing called exporting that electricity out to the grid, and then basically get paid to do so. It's one of those interesting things to look at.
Yeah, this feed-in type of tariff, or just in fact exporting your electricity out. There are, of course, if you've got batteries, you can buy electricity at night when it's cheaper, because they do have different rates in this country of electricity. The idea that electricity has to be generated all the time. The solar panels only work during the daytime. If I top up my batteries, then I can use those during the evening, which is what some people could do if they're not at home and they've got the solar panels on during the day. But it's at night, of course, when there isn't any sun. That's when you want to put the lights on.
Yeah, it's one of those controversial things. It's sort of, when do we want to use the most power? And that's, unfortunately, is at night when you can't see, so you need lights to see. But that's not when solar panels are useful. But at the same time, that's when you don't need the lights on. So, that's how, unfortunately, the world works.
So, one of the things that we had a talk about earlier this week was, I was talking about solar panels being green, and you said to me, but they're not really green.
It's not quite what I said.
You talked about their carbon footprint, didn't you?
I said that although solar panels are seen to be going green, you've got to take into effect that what their carbon footprint in regards to there being a green solution. Because obviously, although things might say they're green, you've got to take into account everything to get to.
So the manufacture, the transport, And the recycling, I suppose.
Yeah, the whole life cycle.
Now, how about the manufacture of solar panels? Is this quite a green process?
I mean, relatively, apart from obviously you've got to extract all the metals and all the rare earth metals and all those sorts of things.
And making silicon? How would you make silicon, Paul?
Well, it's a hard process. Yeah, if you're making, say, the silicon for the solar panels, unfortunately, you've got to grow the silicon.
And where would you do that? In a furnace, perhaps? And might that actually be using quite a lot of CO2 or
Well,
producing a lot of CO2?
I mean, if you the critical thing about that is, if you're using electric heaters, right, then that is obviously using electricity, and then you can use solar panels to power. So you could make it.
It doesn't have to be solar panels, of course. We're talking any renewable source.
We're talking about any renewables, so you can make things greener, which is no problem. But yes, but problem is you've got to make it in these furnace, which is it's hard. This is why solar panels, you didn't have them until recently, in this millennium, shall I say.
But where are these solar panels made, Paul?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, they're mostly made in China.
So if I want some, of course, then we've got to not only manufacture them in China, which is not perhaps the best country in the world for being green at the moment, especially the number of coal-fired power stations. But how are they going to transport these panels over to me?
Well, then they're going to take up by container ship or even container lorry. But
They're not going through the Suez Canal by any chance, are they?
Well, who knows?
Oh, it's open now, isn't it?
Open.
Yes.
It's all fine, yeah.
Yeah.
But all right. Who's the second biggest producer of solar panels?
America? United States of America?
Nearly. India is the next producer.
India. And that doesn't really surprise me because India's manufacturing has gone up.
And then it's then it's America in regards to. But it's actually. But then who uses those solar panels?
Well, I was having a look at a map of the UK for the amount of solar, and I was having a look at the map of the USA for solar, and you could see that some areas of the United States of America were actually very good for the number of hours of sunshine per day. I'm thinking of more down south, sort of Florida and California. But going up north,
well, they've got the same problem.
They have the same problem that we have. We don't have as much sunshine. Europe, we're fairly sort of north in Europe compared with perhaps
I'm thinking
France, Spain, Italy.
Exactly. They've got more opportunities for solar panels or more opportunities for solar. And I'm talking about how about this? You do the other side of the world. You've got Australia. They've got a huge swathe of solar panels. All doing their. Also, because it's a problem. You see, it's land. You see, which is the problem we've got, which is why we have to put it on top of our roofs instead of having basically a field of solar panels, is because they've got the space to do so, where we can't. So we have to put them on top.
And if we take a field and we fill that with solar panels, we can't farm it. Whereas if we put a wind turbine on there, then there's nothing to stop the cows wandering around. They do get used to the wind turbines after a while, and they don't seem to take any notice of them. So you could have those sort of animals, and maybe perhaps wheat and other things growing around there. They probably don't mind the solar panels too much.
No. So
how about recycling these panels? I haven't yet got to the stage on this, but I suppose we have to take into account recycling.
Well, yes, absolutely. It's one of those things where you do the life cycle of a solar panel. You've got to look at the end result. And technically, half of the solar panel is recyclable in regards to all the electronics and possibly even the silicon.
Can we do that at the moment?
But unfortunately, that's the silicon isn't the recyclable bit of the solar panel. But we're talking it contains glass, it contains all lovely metals. I'm just going to read a quick little list of them. You've got selenium, indium, cadmium, terrum, gallium, lead. All lovely metals, which disposing of them is really difficult. So it's hard to say, whether or not those are recyclable. So, but we're only seeing solar panel recycling nearly about to take place, because we're 15 years into the millennium, and probably 15 years into these newer solar panels, and which they've got a lifespan of 25 years. So in theory, in the next 5 to 10 years, some of them will be going off, and that's when we'll slowly see the new recycling part of it.
Is there much to go wrong, though, in a solar panel, really?
Well, this is the odd case. Is sort of, you look at sort of a solar panel and you go, what's happening? Well, obviously you've got the problem of the sunlight basically changing the structure of the metals and all the things on a molecular level, but at the same time it's sort of, you take plastic and you put it in light and it goes yellow and faded and it's crumbly because that's the UV light doing it. Whereas the thing about the solar panels is that it's actually converting all that light or the energy into electricity, as opposed to needing that electricity, or not electricity, that energy to change the structure. So in regards to that, a solar panel basically doesn't actually go off, if that makes sense. Nothing goes wrong with it. The only thing that might go wrong with it is its electronics inside. And that relates to then the inverter, which of course has a shorter shelf life than the actual solar panels. So it's one of those things where, are you looking at the problem of recycling the panels to recycling the inverter?
What we do regularly is we compare this year with last year to see how the inverter sort of converting the sort of day with the same amount of sunshine, and we're seeing if it's dropping off. And at the moment, with our original Schuko inverter, that's working
It's got no
still
problem.
very well.
And you'll find that it will work right up to the point where it stops, and that's the point of which it needs to be replaced or and then recycled.
Yeah. Do you think that putting solar panels on, though, might devalue the property value?
This is one of the odd cases where, initially this is what people thought about. This is why the people didn't do it. Except, of course, you've got to understand that suddenly, on a good day, you're using less electricity. So,
and of course, if you sell a house like this one with the feed-in tariff, then I wouldn't get the feed-in tariff anymore, but the person that took over this house would get the free money, basically.
So it's one of those things where I think it's something to think about, and it's one of those things where you're not going to see it because obviously it's on the roof. But let's say the roof is old and you're going to have to replace the roof. That's a whole kettle of fish to look into. So I don't.
But I have seen some nice Tesla panels where they actually replace the roof tiles with roof tiles that are solar roof tiles.
Yeah, they're getting there.
I don't want to look at the price of those.
Yeah, unfortunately that's the problem. But they're getting there. It's one of those things where you've got new things are coming about, new technologies, and you just got to say making them initially cost a lot, but sometime and down the line they'll become a lot cheaper for everybody else. Yeah, it's just finding applications and then making enough of them to then drive the price down.
I've been watching the news, listening to the news, and it seems that electric cars are the way that we're going to go. The idea that fossil fuels, gas is going to be sort of got rid of. And so we're all going to have electric cars. But how are we going to try and charge those? They're going to be good if they can be charged by my solar panels, by a wind turbine. But if they're charged up by a power station still using fossil fuels, then that electric car is going to use up more electricity than it would have used petrol.
Yeah, it's one of those hard things to say. We're changing all the things and everything's moving away, but you haven't got the efficiency yet to do so. Yes, we've got the efficiency of the power conversion, or more precisely, the power transmission, but the power storage doesn't work. We have yet to get there. We're talking incredible investments into trying to get it better, but we're getting there. It's going to take some time, but transforming from petrol to electric cars is a way forward, but we're not there yet in regard to capacity.
So although people are talking about going green and doing all this, we're still waiting for some of this technology to catch us up.
Yeah, absolutely. But you just look, and the people are coming up with newfangled things. Electric cars have been around for 15 years. We're talking about silly things like forklifts and all sorts of bizarre.
I don't know. The old milk float was electric that used to deliver the milk when I was a child.
But they used to work on different type. It used to be on a different battery technology, and basically it was more efficient to exchange the batteries and put battery powers in. Where we're now talking enough rate where you could keep the batteries and just charge them in.
You can recycle things like the lead acid accumulating batteries quite well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's where technology is moving on, and moving on slowly. So you can't hamper the revolution. It's a snowball effect. It's going, but slowly and slowly it will pick up a speed, and we'll all be driving electric cars. And the main thing is, we need the power consumed. So I read in the news that, what was it, by 2050? So currently, more perspective, currently we use 27 terawatts of power a year, and they said something by 2050 we're going to be using. It was not
four times as much.
4 times.
That's the estimate.
That's the estimate. So now you're going to provide 4 times as much power than we've already got. So obviously,
if we need 10 wind farms at the moment to supply our energy, then we would actually need 40 wind farms.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the things where the need is in the system and in protection, and investment has to be made now and continued, for the next 40 years, because we don't need the 4 times power now. We only need the 1 times now, but in the next 10 years, we need 2 times.
Yeah.
And then 10 years. Yeah, so it's ever expanding. So it's not one of those things where it's not horrific in regards to we need power now. It's more the fact that we need to continue to produce power, or even and make it greener in regards to everything that's happening.
The big problem I still see with solar panels is not the cost. The big problem I see is sunny days. Now, with climate change, I can see that we're actually going to get more sunny days, so that's probably going to be worth it. But how many good days do we have in the average year? And how many days is it basically not worth it? You can see here we've got some statistics up from the last 10 years of my panels, and you can see how many good days we've got, and compare that to the number of days when we actually haven't managed to make really any electricity at all. Those foggy days in the winter when the sun barely comes up.
Well, this is,
and we don't see the sun at all.
This is the problem. Where do you put your solar panels? The answer is you want to put it directly on the equator. But unfortunately, directly on the equator, there's actually not much landmass. So then you're struggling to do that there.
Yeah, I don't live there. I happen to live where I do, and so we have to
So
sort of
we have to
manage
cope. Yeah, but this is one of the things where, do surely a global or where we connect globally, because of course, although we share a power with Europe, but we don't share a power with Africa, nor do we share a power with America or even China. We're all independent systems. So it is one of those things where a global link up, essentially, where instead of buying power very much locally or nationally, it'd be probably better to buy power internationally. So, but it's a hard thing to do. This is where
and that won't be solar panels.
Yeah.
It may be made by solar panels, but we might need to use those solar panels perhaps to use fuel cells to convert to
this is
hydrogen.
This is where solar panels only work during the day, so therefore you're going to need power at night, mostly when you need it. You see, so solar panels isn't the end-all solution to the power generation that we require. However, it is definitely a power boost, because one of the major things, of course, on a nice day, you make more electricity, and so you can do clever things where if you're making more electricity on the sunny day, therefore you can store that power, batteries or even hydroelectric systems, and then on those bad days is then convert that energy back out to supplement those solar panel and that solar panel energy where there is none. So you're sort of one of those things where it is a think up. It needs a link up between multiple systems, and it can't just be solved by one thing. It has to be solved by a combination of everything interlinking and intertwining to produce the maximum or the required amount, and to cleverly use any excess power to generate more things.
Well, I think we better finish there. We've talked quite a long time on this idea of solar panels and whether they're really worth it. It's up to you really whether you think it's worth it for you. But I look at it this way. I've made some investment and I'm now seeing a good return on my investment, especially with more sunny days. And I look forward to more days of free electricity. Thank you for listening to this, our second podcast, and we look forward to talking to you next week when we'll do more about going green. Goodbye from me.
Bye.